Guardians make their own fate. This is a concept that all Guardians can identify with. It means forging your own path, defying all odds that are stacked against you, and deciding what your future is by your own hand. This phrase comes from the Vault of Glass, a raid where we encounter the incomprehensible nature of the Vex, who seek to annihilate us from existence entirely. In contrast to the hopeful message of carving your own destiny, the Vault of Glass also asks the terrifying question, what does it mean to be forgotten? In this video, we're going to revisit the story of the Vault of Glass. We're going to take a look at the story of a fire team who went into the vault seeking treasure and legend, but fell to the Vex, and in that process, made the most important sacrifice. We're going to explore its esoteric connections to its real-life inspirations, and discover what it means to be erased from existence and forgotten entirely, and discover what it means to make your own fate. Beneath Venus, evil stirs. We arrive in the waking ruins of Venus. In the sky lies the Citadel, a Vex structure of incomprehensible purpose. Far beyond, a massive, dormant volcano, a symbol for the ominous nature of these abandoned remains. The focal point of this area is the large, spherical entrance to the Vault of Glass. Battling the Vex and raising a spire unlocks the gateway into its caverns. We begin our descent into the Vex underworld. We pass through the Trial of Kabr, an area named after a fallen guardian, one who met his demise within this stronghold, and a story that we will start to see unfold. The caves are subject to the invasive nature of the Vex, who attempt to convert the planet into one of their own worlds. Strangely, these Vex ruins predate humanity by a few billion years. The Ishtar Collective theorized that when the Traveler terraformed Venus, it did something paracausal to it that cut across space and time. This suggests that the Vex present on Venus came from a different timeline, and only came to our timeline when the Traveler terraformed the planet. We arrive in the Templar's Well, the domain of a powerful Vex Hydra. We encounter Vex belonging to the Heathen Protective, a sect that is not to be confused with the Heathen Corrective, another Vex group stationed on Venus. They are tasked with eliminating the Fallen of House Winter and pillaging abandoned sites of the Ishtar Collective. Their ultimate goal is to take away attention from the Heathen Protective, the ones in the Vault of Glass. Marked by their white stripes and brass frames, the Protective is focused on a colossal project, a purpose that is not comprehensible to us just yet. One theory is that they're reacting to an event that has not happened yet, or working towards something that is already history. As we progress the battle in the Templar's Well, the oracles begin to sing to us. Oracles are small Vex units described as sentient calculations, having the power to manipulate time and foresee what is to come. They are essentially supercomputers, and their power can erase things from reality, including Guardians. Destroying the oracles in a specific order prevents our destruction, and gets us closer to accessing the vault. The Templar still stands in our way, and the Templar is described as an extraordinary creature out of time, one of impossible capabilities.
The Templar and the Oracles guard the way into the deeper vault. Legends say that the Oracles foresee what is to come, a world as the Vex desire it, and that the Templar has the power to shape reality to match the Oracle's design, expunging any threats. The power of the vault flows through the Templar. It will take something extraordinary to shatter its shield.
The Templar has the power to bring to reality what the Oracles foresee, and the power to erase us from reality itself. The true meaning of its name connects to its esoteric nature. Templar was a title for members of the Knights Templar, a military order of Christians of the Catholic faith. Their mission was to protect European pilgrims who were coming to the Holy Land, as well as carry out military operations. They had a role in the Crusades, and are tied to myths of the occult. The word Templar stems from the ancient Latin term templum, referring to a holy place, sanctuary, or shrine that was consecrated by a high religious member. Destiny's Templar seems to fit this role, a high-ranking guard of the mysterious and holy Vault of Glass. There's a lot more to unpack regarding the Vault of Glass and its connections to these esoteric and deeper meanings, but we will get to that later in this video, and trust me, you're going to want to stick around for that. An impossible creature could only be defeated with the use of an impossible and extraordinary weapon, the Aegis Shield. We'll get into the shield's origins in just a little bit, but it's a powerful relic of light, named after an artifact in Greek mythology. The Aegis stems from a Greek word referring to a violent windstorm and goatskin. It's a shield wielded by Athena and Zeus, and in other stories, it serves as a breastplate. The shield is a powerful device, with the head of a Gorgon at its center, acting as a symbol of divine strength. In Destiny, this powerful Aegis relic fires a blast like a thunderstorm, which breaks the Templar. With the Templar's death, we are able to travel into the depths of the Vault of Glass. The cavern seems bigger on the inside, as we descend into the Gorgon's labyrinth. Within this maze lies the fabled Gorgons.
Warlocks speak in tones of awe of the Gorgons, creatures that seem to possess a dreaded, almost unimaginable strength, an ontological weapon. Like the Oracles and the Templar, the Gorgons reputedly possess the ability to define what is and is not real. Whatever they perceive becomes subject to erasure at their will.
Falling to the gaze of a Gorgon will erase you from existence, terminating you from reality. However, their power is confined to the Vault of Glass. They are unable to bring their ontological abilities outside of it. And that is because the Gorgons only exist in the Vault, and therefore only have that power within it. It's a place that the Vex have absolute power over, and so they determine its rules. But that doesn't extend outside of it, and that's why Vex aren't going around erasing people all the time. That word ontological is key here. It refers to the area of metaphysics that deals with the nature of being and existence, determining what is real and what isn't. These Gorgons are named after the Gorgons of Greek mythology. These creatures were three sisters, Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa, the daughters of Phorkys and Ceto. With their monstrous eyes and snake hair, they held the power to turn anyone who looked at them into stone. This parallels the Gorgons of Destiny. Both creatures have a gaze so powerful that it can change the very nature of a poor soul who happens to be caught within it. With Greek mythology, that's being turned to stone. With Destiny, that's being erased from existence. Passing through this labyrinth, we come to a large, gaping valley. Beneath you is an endless chasm, and you must cross it in order to gain access to the true terror of the Vault of Glass. It is daunting, but at the same time, somewhat peaceful, a moment of calmness before the final encounter. This valley also connects to other places in the Destiny universe. There is a portal here that leads to the Grove of Ulantan in the Whisper of the Worm mission. This goes to show how interconnected the Vault of Glass is with the other corners of the Destiny universe. We cross the abyss and stand before the Glass Throne. A sea of glass, clear as crystal, a majestic and ethereal domain, the throne of a terrible being, but still something so beautiful. You can't help but stand in awe. The Glass Throne is split between three sections, the past, present, and future. On the left side of the throne is a portal that takes us into Venus's past, an orange primordial area, seemingly in the early stages of the planet's creation, or perhaps before it was terraformed by the Traveler. Within the past, we encounter the Precursors, also known as the Soul Primeval. Carrying white frames and angular heads, the Precursors are Vex with origins in the ancient past of the Vex network. Their casings built before humanity had even been born. It's easy to assume that the Precursors are the ancestors of modern Vex, but to quote their Grimoire card, with the Vex, it is never so simple. So, there may be more to their lineage. On the right side of the room lies a portal to Venus's future. The area is green and full of nature, far past the terraformation of the planet and an unknown amount of years into the future. We encounter Vex descendants, also known as the Soul Imminent. With brown frames and circular headgear, these are Vex that exist in our future. The existence of the descendants raises dire questions, as if they exist in a possible future, can we take that as evidence that they cannot be defeated in our present time, since somehow they still persist? It's something to contemplate. And in the middle of the room lies gatekeepers and Vex of the present. Before we encounter the one who sits at the Glass Throne, we have to stabilize the time streams by transferring the Aegis between Venus past and Venus future. Once the gatekeepers are killed, Atheon, Time's conflux, appears beneath the Glass Throne. This being is the overseer of the operations of the Vault of Glass. It has command over the time streams, a power of the Vault of Glass that connects past and future, allowing the Vex to peer into all possible outcomes and adapt their plans accordingly. Atheon uses the time streams in an attempt to separate us from the Aegis and the rest of our fire team. If we are separated and the Aegis is lost, we are subject to annihilation. To understand Atheon, let's first take a look at its name. Atheon's name has a very interesting meaning. Atheon seems to have roots in the Greek words eon and atheos. Eon refers to a massive amount of time, a period of eternity, and in a scientific sense, refers to a period of 1 billion years. Atheos means without God, due to the A prefix meaning without, and theos meaning God. So Atheon seems to translate to without time, which makes sense given its role in the Vault of Glass and the Vex as a whole. Atheon is without time as it's not bound to our linear time, as it can send us into the past and future via the time streams. To understand Atheon requires the acceptance of certain limitations. We cannot truly grasp the nature of a being who defies simple cause and effect. Looking at Atheon's Grimoire card reveals some interesting things. The Grimoire card presents Atheon as the overseer of a system of Vex confluxes, and its position places it at the center of converging causal pathways. Atheon can sidestep past and future, so it's unknown if Atheon created the Vault or if the Vault created Atheon. It suggests that all these pathways converge on Atheon, allowing it to manipulate these pathways of cause and effect so that the Vex can find a future where they always get an outcome they desire. It's similar to a mathematics solution known as a confluent hypergeometric function. This is essentially where different conceptual paths all lead to the same result, or where regular singularities merge into an irregular singularity. The word confluent comes from the Latin word confluere, meaning to flow together. So, these pathways converge onto Atheon, so it can determine how to get them to reach the same result. And the Vex are using the Vault of Glass to realize a greater desire. They want to become a law of reality itself. And potentially, the way to accomplish this is to go back to the beginning of the universe and write themselves into the very fabric of reality so that they were always a law. That could be how Atheon is the command nexus that unifies efforts across time, and a being without time. But despite its immense power and command over time, Atheon is destroyed and the Vault of Glass is liberated. It was only through the paracausal light of the Aegis that we were able to defeat this untouchable beast. The Vex did not truly understand the paracausal nature of the light, and that was the weakness in the Vault of Glass. Even though our Guardian and their fire team conquered the Vault of Glass, we were not the first to descend into the underworld. The Titan Kabr, the Warlock Praedyth, the Hunter Pahanin. These three Guardians all wanted to become legend, and had seen some of the most wild things in the solar system. Our earliest record of this fire team comes from the Great Ahamkara hunt. The three had tracked down 6 Ahamkara on Mars, and these Ahamkara took the form of wyverns, and to the tune of a classical song from Old Earth, the Guardians battled them. Kabr wished to be a giant. Pahanin became a living embodiment of void that wherever he pointed, Ahamkara died, and Praedyth wished that it would never end. Quote, "In the middle, between them, Praedyth smiled. A winged and scaled lion with a boar's tusks leapt at him, and he could swear he saw the thing wink at him as he tore it apart. Beneath the song, Praedyth heard static, like a comm signal. Best not to think about it. Praedyth wished again, and the hunt went on." End quote. Sometime after the Great Ahamkara hunt, the trio planned a raid on the Vault of Glass. It's unknown how they caught wind of this mythical place, or why they wanted to embark on such a journey. Perhaps they heard it from Cade 6, who had an interest in the Vault of Glass, or from the archives of the Ishtar Collective. Either way, the fire team approached the jungles of Venus. They formed the spire within the Waking Ruins, traveled through the dark caverns, and encountered the Vex, the Oracles, and the Templar. It is here that this fire team would shatter.
His name was Kabr. He wasn't my friend, but I knew and respected him as a guardian and a good man. He fought the Vex alone. This destroyed him. In the time before he vanished, he said things I think should be remembered. These are some of them.
In the vault, time frays, and a needle moves through it. The needle is the will of Atheon. I do not know the name of the shape that comes after the needle. No one can open the vault alone. I opened the vault. There was no one with me, but I was not alone. You will meet the Templar in a place that is time before or after stars. The stars will move around you and mark you and sing to you. They will decide if you are real. I drank of them. It tasted like the sea.
Kabr battled the Vex alone, which is a strange thing to say, as we know he went into the Vault of Glass with at least Praedyth and Pahanin at his side. Pahanin even recorded some of the things he had said, so we even get this line about Kabr. Kabr says how nobody can open the vault on their own, yet he managed to open the vault. According to his memory, there was no one with him, yet he was also not alone. The others on his fire team were erased from time itself, and this line suggests that there could have been others on the fire team than just Praedyth, Pahanin, and himself, but they were erased from existence. Among those erased seem to have also been Praedyth, who we'll get to in just a moment, but Kabr's experiences on his own seem to have made him forget about Pahanin as well. It was like they never existed, to the point where Kabr only remembered himself in the vault, but still knew there had to have been others. The flavor text of the Kabr suit reveals more about his experience in the vault. Quote, Kabr fought the Vex alone, but somehow they didn't kill him. He consumed their technology like fire, fashioning armor from their remnants. In the aftermath, he became obsessed with the machines. He was claimed by the vault. His armor and myth are all that remain. End quote. With his teammates seemingly erased from time, he battled the Vex and drank radiolaria, seemingly from the oracles, as he mentioned that stars will move around, mark you, and sing, which is exactly how the oracles appear and function in the encounter. Kabr was a true warrior, but still met his end.
I have destroyed myself to do this. They have taken my ghost. They are in my blood and brain, and now there is hope. I have made my wound in the vault. I have pierced it and let in light. Bathe in it and be cleansed. Look to it and understand. From my own light and from the thinking flesh of the Vex, I made a shield. The shield is your deliverance. It will break the unbreakable. It will change your fate. Bind yourself to the shield. Bind yourself to me. And if you abandon your purpose, let the vault consume you, as it consumed me. Now it is done. If I speak again, I am not Kabr.
With the Vex radiolaria consuming his mind, the armor fashioned out of Vex remnants corrupting his body, and no ghost or fire team, Kabr imbued his light into the Aegis. The Aegis, formed out of Kabr's light, had the power to wound the vault, and to allow future guardians to make their own fate. He knew he was going to die, but he did not want his death to be in vain. Kabr's sacrifice allowed our guardian to destroy Atheon and the Vex of the Vault of Glass. Following the creation of the Aegis, Kabr was assimilated into the Vex network. And we know he persisted in the Vex network thanks to a lore tab we got in the Curse of Osiris. We seemingly read a message from a Vexified Kabr on the Kabr's Glass Aegis lore tab.
Well joined, class. Sky. Case passed. Return impossible. Grazing. Rocked. Major distilled. Case present. Return vestigial. Vault. Aegis. Awakened. Infinite. Case future. Return inevitable. Light. Truth. Dark. If the warden sees the brightest death, the thinkers equate black with end, then K. Their desire is not malevolent. It is survival. She is wrong. There is no evil. There is no despise. There is no separation. There is harmony inside. If you allow it. It was not done. I speak again. It was wrong. I am still him. And now, them. And that is future. V.
This is a transmission from Kabr within the Vex Collective. It's from a Vex version of Kabr, and there have been changes to his nature given this transformation. And remember, his final words were that if he spoke again, it would be from a false copy, a doppelganger. It would not be from him. So, we must approach his words with caution. The first clue that points to this message being from Kabr is the name, Kabr's Glass Aegis, a direct reference to his experience in the Vault of Glass. And he starts by saying a few interesting things, like how the glass and the sky are joined, seemingly referring to the Vex and the light. His return is impossible, as consuming the radiolaria was a permanent, everlasting assimilation into the Vex network, and his new state is irreversible. He refers to the present case as being vestigial, with vestigial being a word to refer to the last small part of something that existed before. It's a word used in anatomy to refer to a body part or organ that is so small or imperfect that no longer functions, like a human tailbone, for example. This seems to refer to Kabr's past state as a full human, and his present state is a small part of something that used to exist, his old body and humanity. What he is now is just a shell of his former self. This present case that Kabr mentions also seems to indicate that Kabr's Aegis allowed the Vex to study the light within the Vault of Glass. And maybe, because of this event, the Vex were able to find a future where they win. Of course, they can't fully simulate paracausality, but maybe the presence of the Aegis allow them to study it just a bit more. Perhaps this is what we see with the opening cutscene of the Curse of Osiris. This one has always been somewhat of a mystery to me, as it's never been clear of what exactly Osiris is stepping into. Is it our Guardian's attack on the Vault, or the past adventure of Kabr's fire team? With this transmission, I think it's fair to say that it's a Vex simulation, an approximation of the Light and Guardians. Of course, not a full simulation of paracausality, as the Vex are incapable of doing that. I've heard some theories that this was a Vex recording, which that could be true. The issue with the Vex simulating paracausality is not just because we wield crazy space magic, but the nature of Guardians and the forces of paracausality itself. The Vex are bound to the physical laws of cause and effect, and while they can peer into different timelines and simulate futures, it is still all bound by variables that allow them to predict what happens next. By the nature of paracausality, they cannot predict how Guardians will choose to act, how they will make their own fate. The light and darkness ignore these rules of causality, so things happen without cause. It allows us to bend the law of physics by our own will. The presence of the Aegis allowed the Vex to study the light inside the Vault of Glass, which is probably why they keep simulating it. And it's in this moment that Osiris realizes that the Vex have discovered a future where they win. So I think it's intentional to pair that moment with a simulation or recording of the Vault of Glass, to show that they were looking at the Vault of Glass and that probably unlocked something there. He then goes on to say how a future return is inevitable. This may be referring to the return of one of his fire team members, which we'll get into later in this video. Or perhaps this inevitable future refers to Kabr's own future state. The final line of the Glass Aegis lore tab has Kabr referring to his current state as being both him and them, and how that state is future. His future seems to be within the Vex. Kabr then says that the Vex see the light and darkness as forces that both lead to oblivion. He then says that he was wrong, that he is still himself, but also has become Vex, and through this has learned the true nature of the Vex. And this nature is that they are not inherently evil, but following a directive to survive, to achieve a perfect pattern. Their directive is to convert the entire universe into Vex constructs and structures. They aren't doing this out of malice, but it's just something they've been programmed to do. And this is how they win. The Vex have no desire to kill, no evil within their shells, just a directive to convert, and eventually assimilate everything into their greater collective, including you. But the one thing stopping a total conversion is the big unknown, the thing that they cannot predict nor simulate, paracausality. In the end, Kabr died a painful death, an assimilation into the Vex network, but it was not in vain. His name also seemed to have been an omen to his end. Kabr is an Arabic word meaning grave or tomb, which is fitting for his ultimate fate, with the Vault of Glass serving as his tomb. Even though it's suggested that other fire team members were erased from the timeline entirely, with it being like they never existed in the first place, we do know the fate of Pahanin and Praedyth. Pahanin was the sole survivor of the Vault of Glass. Somehow, he managed to escape, and may have left Kabr to battle the Vex on his own. But the Vault of Glass left the hunter traumatized. He was terrified of traveling alone, so he created the Super Good Advice exotic machine gun to be his friend, which held an AI on board to keep him company. But Pahanin would not escape death. Dredgen Yor murdered him with his terrible weapon, the Thorn. As for Praedyth, there was a lot to unpack regarding his true fate. He managed to persist inside the Vault of Glass. Even though he was trapped and imprisoned, he still existed. To truly examine how he managed to live on, we need to look at the history of the Vault of Glass after we killed Atheon. The Vault of Glass remained unattended following the destruction of Atheon. That is, until Fallen of the House of Wolves sought its time streams. During the House of Wolves expansion, the Fallen named Skolas incited a rebellion against the Reef, and declared himself the fabled Kell of Kells, the unifier of all Fallen houses, and he wanted to claim the Traveler. His plan included an assault on the Vault of Glass, where he wanted to capture the oracles and the ability to manipulate the time streams.
So Skolas wanted to use the oracles as taps into the Vex network. The Vex tech here matches a signature from the Vault of Glass. These machines fade in and out of our timeline of New World signatures, and the number keeps growing. It's the Vex tech. Skolas! He's pulling the entire House of Wolves through time!
Skolas wanted the power of the Vault of Glass so that he could pull the entire House of Wolves through time. In the end, Skolas and the House of Wolves were defeated by our Guardian, and the rebellion was put to rest. But that was not the last raid on the Vault of Glass by another faction. During the Taken King, our Guardian was called to the Vault of Glass. IKOR reported that an old Vanguard signal was permeating from it, and suggested that it was from a Guardian unstuck in time. We returned to the Waking Ruins, and received a transmission from this Guardian. His voice was restrained, trapped by the Vex, but what he said suggested that the Vex were allowing these messages to be heard outside of the vault. We encountered Vex Goblin disciples who did not fire at us, rather, they stood at the door waiting for something. Perhaps they were waiting for us. As we ventured through the trial of Kabr, we heard another message from this Guardian, who identified himself as Praedyth, the lost member of Kabr's fire team. We entered the Templar's well and discovered Taken attempting to harness the powers of the Vault of Glass. We destroyed Morphon, Blighted Mind, and heard one final message from Praedyth.
I think that's it. They're closing the door. I lift. Just remember, tell them, I lift.
We reach a hidden part of the vault and found the remains of a Guardian, the skeleton of Praedyth. His name and story were reclaimed from time itself, but his body was physically dead. Throughout the mission, you could discover hidden ghosts within crevices and corners of the vault. These ghosts were seemingly unstuck in time, and had each visited different points throughout history. We'll get into what these ghosts saw in just a minute. When picking up these ghosts, we heard lines from Praedyth, who spoke about the nature of the Vex. He saw that the Vex had no hope or imagination. The only thing they have is the pattern. A pattern that forces everything to fit and bend to its will. Otherwise, it gets cut away. And remember, the pattern Praedyth is talking about is the ultimate goal of the Vex. It means consuming and recreating reality in their image, a total Vex conversion of the entire universe. As Osiris put it, quote, "The Vex seek convergence, the reduction of all life to its simplest, most meaningless form. An entelechy of zeros and ones. Given a choice between darkness and convergence, I would choose darkness. It is a logical choice." End quote.
They think this is the end of them. A path with no escape. And yet, here they are. There they were, and there they will be, and there they will have been. For them, there is no paradox. There is only the pattern. And the pattern needs the Vex to see it to completion, and so the Vex must be for the mind of the Vex. Is that faith?
The Vex saw their ultimate defeat to Oryx. They saw themselves being taken, their directive being to adhere to the will of the Taken King. But yet, they still saw themselves winning because the pattern must be fulfilled, and they only see a future where the pattern wins. To the Vex, that is faith. On one hand, they foresaw their loss, but continued to act in accordance to the pattern because they only saw an outcome marked by their victory. They saw the pattern completed. To the Vex, that is faith, a commitment to the pattern. Despite all the signs they were going to lose to Oryx, they kept on fighting. That defeat meant becoming taken, but that wasn't a paradox to them, because they still existed despite being destroyed. Praedyth then sends us into a vision of the Vex's future. In this vision, his voice is unrestrained, and he seems to be directly speaking to our Guardian. The previous messages seem to have been from different points in the past, and they had finally escaped their prison. But here, Praedyth is talking to our Guardian, and he says how this vision is of the Vex's unchanging future where they become enslaved to a will they don't understand. This enslavement is being broken by Oryx, becoming taken. However, this future will not come to pass, as our Guardian is here. We are the element unaccounted for, something the Vex could not predict. Our Guardian prevented the Vex from being taken by killing Oryx. And maybe this reveals why the Vex allowed Praedyth's messages to escape the vault.
I don't know why they're ready to speak. Now after so long.
They knew we'd want to rescue Praedyth, so they used him to draw us here. We discovered Praedyth's ghost, marked with future war cult headers. We took this ghost to Lakshmi 2, and were sent down a quest unpacking the contents of this ghost. Our Guardian was tasked to track down a simulation core from a taken Minotaur. The data revealed by the core showed how the Minotaur's imperative was corrupted, and replaced with a directive to destroy light and obey Oryx. She then sent us to take the Eye of Atheon. A ripple in the past sent us to Twilight Gap, to reveal what Praedyth's ghost may have seen there in the distant past. We retrieved the bracelet of Anna Bray. Atheon's eye then sent us to another ripple in time flowing from a Vex unit at the heart of the Black Garden, this construct being known as the Groundskeeper. Upon destroying the Groundskeeper and retrieving Pujari's ring, we are given the No Time to Explain exotic, an object pulled through time, much like the other artifacts we had found. As we worked through this quest and unpacked the contents of the ghost, we learned that Praedyth had many different visions.
I saw darkness, but not in the abstract. Not like the speaker talks about it. Real, flesh and blood darkness standing before me. It wore a fallen captain like he was a suit of clothes. It laughed at me, reached out a hand, and then I was gone, off to somewhere else. What are these ripples? These visions? Is the darkness something that will be? Or something that might be? The Black Garden sprawls before me. It twists and shifts, almost too fast to follow. Sometimes grounded on Mars. Sometimes somewhere else. Through its twisting passages, lurches as hulking construct, called forth by the faith of the soul progeny. The Groundskeeper keeps them safe. Every timeline I see through the door of my cell, every sliver of reality, bears one constant. Her. She's always there. Standing sometimes off to the side, sometimes in the foreground, sometimes sad, sometimes speaking to herself, and always carrying a gun.
Praedyth had seemingly seen a personification of darkness, perhaps a vision of the Winnower. He saw ripples of darkness, a vision that seemed to predict the arrival of the Black Fleet. He experienced the Black Garden, and saw the Exo-Stranger across various timelines. She was a constant figure. Even though everything would change, she was always there. And the No Time to Explain exotic could have been forged by Praedyth, who built it in the image of her rifle, a weapon he always saw as a constant. There's another odd trinket that we received from the Vault of Glass, a weapon pulled through time, the Vex Mythoclast. A causal loop within the weapon's mechanism, suggesting that the firing process somehow binds space and time into some legends live forever, others are overwritten, reshaped by the sheer will of those who believe that any ordeal can be conquered, any foe vanquished, any god cast down. The Mythoclast is a Vex instrument from some far-flung corner of time and space, mysteriously fit for human hands. Its origins, mechanism of action, and ultimate purpose remain unknown. Perhaps it will reveal itself to you in time. The Vex Mythoclast is a mysterious one. Its name pulls from the ancient Greek word mythos, meaning myth, and the clast originates from klastos, meaning to break. So, Mythoclast translates to Mythbreaker. The lore and flavor text suggests that this weapon interacts with branching timelines. Its flavor text refers to a loop of cause and effect where everything feeds back into itself, and the text itself demonstrates this. Quote, a causal loop within the weapon's mechanism, suggesting that the firing process somehow binds space and time into a causal loop within the weapon's mechanism, etc. This could just keep going on and on. The weapon has a causal loop baked into it, which explains the way it fires. When you finish firing, it seems to reset itself before feeding back into the loop. One of its perks, Volatile Battery, reads, this battery simultaneously exists in multiple timelines, causing the weapon to overcharge. And you build stacks of overcharge by defeating targets, thanks to the Temporal Unlimiter perk. That perk directly means time without restriction, so seemingly, as you kill enemies with the Vex Mythoclast, it pulls energy from itself in other timelines. The most strange detail about the Mythoclast is the fact that its origins are unknown. It's a Vex weapon given its design, and the lore tab confirms it is a Vex instrument. But yet, it also says how its origins are unknown, and that it was built for human hands. This part is a mystery. Could it have been constructed by Praedyth, Elsie Bray, Vex-human combinations from the distant future, or perhaps the past? Is it a weapon that the Vex designed specifically for our Guardian? It is unknown, and it makes you question why the Mythoclast even exists. Let's return to those scattered ghosts we found in the Paradox mission. Each of these ghosts were sent to different points in time, and we read about what they saw in the Mysteries the Vault of Glass Grimoire cards from Destiny 1. The first ghost was sent to a distant world in the distant past. This ghost saw a pink sky with clouds and an endless amount of ships flying in the air. The landscape was beautiful. Carefully tended lakes, rivers, fields of lush crop, and colorful trees. It was a paradise, and one that was engineered for both form and function. Hanging in the sky was an alabaster sphere, seemingly the Traveler. This ghost was picked up by a four-armed creature, who chatted to its friend in another language. The noises were harsh, but their tone was gentle and filled with curiosity. These creatures were not violent. This ghost seemed to have been transported to the Elixni Golden Age on Reese. We know that Reese was visited by the Traveler, and given a golden age similar to that of humanity's golden age. Reese was a paradise during this time, and we know that the planet was home to farmlands known as Gardenways and creatures known as River Catchers. And the four-armed creature that picked up the ghost was definitely an Elixni. This entry does make me think about how this ghost was perceived in Elixni culture. These two Elixni physically interacted with the ghost, so they might have come to a conclusion that it was a thing of light. They might have realized that it carried the light of the Traveler. As far as we know, the Traveler only created ghosts following humanity's collapse, so a ghost appearing on Reese would definitely spark the interest of many scientists and researchers. So imagine this, you're an Elixni that found this ghost, and then that ghost later became a staple of your culture. This ghost may became a mystery of the culture. You knew it was a thing of light, but you didn't really understand how it was made or where it really came from. And then hundreds of years later, Guardians are walking around with them. The Elixni randomly found one of these things, but humanity was seemingly gifted thousands of them. I think it's interesting to think about how the Elixni might have perceived ghosts if they had found one of them hundreds of years ago, and maybe they made the connection there, that the Guardians have the thing that they just randomly discovered one day. The next ghost was sent to the middle of a battlefield. The ghost struggled to see what was going on. It was only able to capture a series of images that flicker in and out repeatedly. The first image was the face of an Exo, who picked up the ghost and was confused as to what he was looking at. But he clipped the ghost to his belt, and the next image is of a battlefield, featuring 24 Exo soldiers preparing for battle. The next image is a chaotic scene. Vex and Exos battle atop a scarred landscape, a planet or moon that the ghost cannot identify. The next image is of the leg of a Vex goblin, and the Exo the ghost was clipped to going down. The last image showcased the horizon of the world, and the ghost rolling down to a crashed spacecraft. The last thing the ghost saw was a symbol of Golden Age Earth embedded on the spacecraft. This ghost seems to have traveled to the Vex Exo War that took place on Europa in the late Golden Age. This was a conflict where the Vex ambushed the colony of Eventide through the Glassway portal. These Vex hailed from 2082 Volantis, the Vex Forge star. This star system lacked any planets, but the star itself was, quote, big enough to fill the solar system from the sun to the orbit of Neptune, end quote. The Exos from the Eventide colony battled the Vex invaders, and while the Vex were eventually pushed back and the Glassway sealed shut, most of the colony was destroyed and its inhabitants killed. It seems that this ghost witnessed this conflict, given the presence of Vex and Exos engaging in a titanic battle and the Golden Age ruins. The third and final ghost traveled to the future. It saw a starfield and then a huge convoy of ships flying into the empty space. These were Guardian ships, hundreds of them. Some ships had been forged out of Golden Age remnants, while other ships had models that haven't even been created yet. These ships were battle-scarred, some of them were very weak and started to lose power and drift away into space. Some of the ships had familiar symbols, like the symbols of Dead Orbit, New Monarchy, and Future War Cult, and the icon of the Vanguard. There were also symbols that had yet to be seen in the tower. Every ship, no matter the size, quote, carries shards of stone, remnants of the city and the tower, banners too, tattered and worn from entering and leaving warp, end quote. The fleet stayed only for a moment before they warped through space once more. The ships that had lost power were left adrift, and the ghost, too, spinned off into space. This is from a future that did not come to pass. It seems to be a mass exodus from the tower following a second collapse. Perhaps the Black Fleet arrived, and humanity lost. This is evident in the fact that we are seeing a massive armada of every ship the tower might have possessed fleeing from the tower, and each ship carried pieces of stone from the tower and the city. I really love that small detail. Humanity made an effort to carry a piece of their home with them, even in this dark and bleak future. But this is from an alternate timeline, something that we never witnessed. We battled the Black Fleet and the Witness and claimed victory. Future War Cult, New Monarchy, and Dead Orbit were also not present in our future where we encountered the Witness. They were all gone by then. The final Grimoire card showcases what truly happened to Praedyth. Praedyth opened his eyes. The receiver sputtered to life. It had taken him the better part of a decade to get his crude comm scanner working, and another few years to get it transmitting. Now, in the brief windows of time when the door to his cell opened, he would call for help. He sighed, a deliberate act that caused him to cough roughly. He had no idea how much longer his body would hold out, but then, that kind of thinking was all relative here, wasn't it? Praedyth stared at the sprawling mass of metal and wires, listening to the tinny sounds coming from his makeshift speaker. Before he spoke, he always made a point to listen. The words, the concepts that flowed into his mind confused him. Timelines and potentialities that might have already happened, might happen, might never happen. A pattern was ever dancing in the edge of his vision. At times like this, when the world rushed past him, he had to hold tight to the fact that he was still breathing. He would often focus in on the intake, output, in-breath, out-breath, breath, breath, breath. Hours later, he blinked, refocused. The static had stopped. He had missed a window. Once, he would have cursed and spat. Now, he just shook his head, a weak movement of the neck. The Vex had decided their end. The Guardians had interceded. The Vex were fallible. If the Vex can be wrong, if they can make mistakes, someday he could be free. Someday he might leave the vault, might see again the Traveler. Until then, he would listen. He would observe. He would be the man on the outside looking in, a viewpoint into the consciousness of minds that spanned galaxies. He would try to understand the Vex. Praedyth closed his eyes. Praedyth continued to exist within a cell in the Vault of Glass. He became unstuck in time. Years and years would pass inside this prison, and he would receive visions of the past, present, and future. Of things that might have already happened, might happen, and might never happen. It's an impossible prison for an impossible existence. Somehow, he defied extinction, but was kept isolated. There were times when the door to his prison would open, and this allowed him to send messages into the outside world. These seem to be the messages we hear in the Paradox mission. We don't know exactly when he sent these messages, it could have been long ago, but they traveled through time, and we were able to receive them. When the Vex closed the door, the window for Praedyth to send messages also ends. This is what we hear at the end of Paradox, the door being closed. But eventually, the door would open again.
I think that's it. They're closing the door.
Time was different for him in that cell. He became an outsider looking in. His body managed to hold out for years and years. He was not bound to the same flow of time as the world outside of the cell. Time was relative to his frame of reference. And in that prison, he experienced strange hallucinations, timelines, and concepts that all invaded his mind. He would spiral, but in these moments of existential dread, he made an effort to ground himself and believe that someday, the Vex would make a mistake, and he would have his freedom. This belief is grounded in the fact that the Vex had decided their own future, but the Guardians interceded. We intervened and defeated the Vex of the Vault of Glass. The Vex are capable of making mistakes. They are not perfect machines, they can still fail. And the nature of Praedyth's body is pretty interesting to think about, because while he's seemingly alive in the vault, we also find his skeleton in the Paradox mission. And so, like many things regarding the Paradox mission, this is a paradox. He can simultaneously exist inside of the vault and also be dead in the form of the skeleton we see. So, how did Praedyth exactly get trapped inside of this prison? He might have managed to survive erasure because of the wish he made to that Ahamkara on Mars. Remember, when he was fighting the Ahamkara, he wished it would never end. And after he made this wish, an Ahamkara winked at him, and then he heard static like a comm signal. This Ahamkara seemed to have granted his wish that it would never end. While he may have intended for that wish to be just for the time with his fire team, the Ahamkara are tricksters, and twist the words of those who wish. The static, like a comm signal, might be referring to the static that Praedyth continues to hear in his prison. That static is a recurring motif. Seemingly, the Ahamkara granted his wish, but in a way that was isolating and terrifying. But this is not the end of his story. This takes us into the Aspect lorebook, where we learn more about the fate of this warlock. This lorebook came during Shadowkey. It was acquired from killing Vex across the solar system, and its entries give us insight into the nature of the Vex and the destiny of Praedyth. Chapter 1. Realis. The Undying Mind lies in the garden, a ruin of metal given over to greenery, a barrow rising out of black soil rich with nitrogen and thought. Everything in the garden becomes of the garden, eventually. Shed leaves decompose and fertilize the soil. So do the bones and unspoken ideas of everyone who couldn't find the end of the maze. So do the wordless songs of the Vex gardeners. They walk between the leaves, encouraging growth, laying down their bronze pathways, the only straight lines in all the garden's tangles. The Vex weave themselves into the garden, and the garden returns the favor. Harpies patrol in the air as goblins do on the ground, their veins wafting in the still air on their endless, untiring rounds. The pathways lie dull against granite. No power runs through them, not since the heart stopped beating. But the Vex of the Soul Divisive have programmed themselves to worship darkness. It has given them power before, and the Vex understand time. What has happened before is somewhere still always happening. What will happen is happening now. Soil that lies fallow for a season will recover and produce again. Power that wanes will wax again. The ground is ready for it. The harpies stop where they are. A shudder running through each of them in order from one end of the garden to the other. A flicker, a wash of power coming from somewhere distant. A pulse. The power it carries lights up the pathways. The mind's eye blinks for a bare moment, under its blanket of lichen. The power passes through the garden, overruns the Vex machinery within it, floods the network beyond it. A moment held, like the shore after the tide rushes out. Motes of something that isn't dust shake in the air. The bronze pathways hum, a counterpoint to the goblin's song, and the garden's door vibrates with them. This chapter opens with an image of the Undying Mind in the Black Garden. This Vex mind was the protector of the Black Garden. And it was so ancient that even Maya Sundaresh and the Ishtar Collective documented it during the Golden Age. Given its immortal programming, the Undying Mind seemingly cannot die. And the Undying Mind is a member of the Soul Divisive, the Vex that are covered in moss, the ones that worship the darkness. But ever since our Guardian destroyed the Black Heart, they have not felt the darkness's power. However, there was a pulse in the Black Garden. Given the context of Season of Undying and Shadowkeep as a whole, which again is when the Aspect lore book was released, we can assume this pulse of darkness came from the Lunar Pyramid waking up. The name of the chapter, Realis, is a term defined as, quote, a category of grammatical moods, the most common of which is the indicative mood, that indicate that something actually is, or is not, the case, end quote. So, the realist mood is used to express truth and to indicate something that is fact. For example, he eats would be a form of the realist mood. On the contrary, the irrealist moods refer to moods that indicate that a certain situation or action is not known to happen or have happened as the speaker is talking. An example of an irrealist mood would be like, it is necessary he eats, or if I were to have eaten. These moods are used to indicate things or actions that have not happened or have not been known to have happened at the current moment in which someone is speaking. This difference is important to remember as we go further into the lore book. The key takeaway for this first chapter is that Realist is referring to a moment that has happened and is factual in regards to the current context of the story. These Vex and the Undying Mind in the Garden have experienced this pulse at the time recorded in the entry, and they have started to activate. Chapter 2, Narrative. He's had this hallucination before. It's not that good, as hallucinations go. Praedyth's radio is talking to him, voices rising out of the static. He wishes it at least use a familiar voice, a Pahanin, or Teiko, or Kabr. He'd even take a mirror at this point. He turns his head toward the radio. His cheek scrapes against granite. It hurts vaguely, the same way everything does. Muffled by too much time and not enough light.
This is Chioma, calling from band 227.17.
You said that already.
I did? When?
Last time.
Or the time before. Chronology is a lost art in this cell.
Alert. Splunkers contact band 227.97, something something, sky shock potential.
Say again? The band's number.
Excuse me, whoever you are. We're calling from band 227.17. If you were contacted by another 227 group, we really need to know.
You said that last time, too.
Did the other group use this radio frequency?
They did. Praedyth hasn't had the strength for fiddling with his radio lately, in new attempts to contact the world outside of the cell. Hasn't had the strength for much but counting off meaningless intervals of time, waiting for the next window to chance a message.
We've tried this frequency at least a dozen times over the past month. It's never worked before.
Then what's changed? The question shakes him out of his torpor. Praedyth sits up, a wave of nausea following, and he repeats the question out loud. Maybe it's not a hallucination. Maybe he's finally breached the walls of the vault somehow. Maybe he has a chance.
Hello? Are you still there?
All he gets back is a wash of static. Whatever signal he was picking up, it's gone. Praedyth, still trapped in the vault, made contact with the copies of the Ishtar Collective. During the Golden Age, the Vex made copies of a group of Ishtar Collective scientists who were studying them on Venus. The Vex created 227 individual copies of each person, and these copies now reside in the Vex network. The 227 copies decided to become explorers of the Vex network, splitting up into many different groups in an effort to chart as much as they could. The copies speaking to Praedyth are members of the group 227.17. The 227 indicates that they're among the 227 copied versions of the original group, and the 17 refers to their specific subgroup. They are group 17 of 227. The strange thing is that somehow Praedyth's radio managed to pick up on their signal. It's in these moments that the door to his prison opens up, allowing him to receive and send messages to the outside world. which is again what happened when we heard from Praedyth during the Paradox mission. And during the window of time where the door opened, Praedyth was able to intercept the Ishtar Collective transmissions. And this encounter with Group 227.17 was not the first time Praedyth had spoken to members of an Ishtar group. He had seemingly contacted Group 227.97 once before, much to the surprise of Group 227.17. The title, Narrated, is another type of grammatical mood to indicate an event that is surprising or amazing. This makes sense for the story of this specific chapter, as the interception of the Ishtar signal was something very surprising. The discovery that Praedyth had been in contact with another Ishtar team was so unexpected, and this revelation changes the fate of both Praedyth and these Ishtar copies. Chapter 3. Gnomic. He is not. He is walking in the garden. He is talking, silent, singing. K, K, V, 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 V.
Watch your 6. Don't worry about me, grow.
He holsters his gun to gesture. He holsters his gun to drink. His gun is rusted into its holster, and he will never pull it out again.
How bad can it be? How bad can it be? How bad can it be? How can we grow?
A titan is a wall, a shield, a cup, filling itself to overflowing. The container changes the shape of its contents, but the contents change the nature of the container, and the nature is eternity.
Who knows what's listening? It's listening. It's saying, grow.
There is a shape that is his mind, and the shape is to protect, and the shape is sacrifice. The shape is
grow.
V. He was named too well. He is his own grave, and the cut on his left hand will never heal. This entry is a little weird and hard to decipher, but there are a few clues here that we can extrapolate to find its meaning. The chapter seems to be describing the experience of Kabr in the Vault of Glass. It describes a titan who drinks something strange, and that substance overflows his mind and nature. This seems to be referencing Kabr, who we know drank the Oracle fluid and became lost to the Vex, growing into the network. It also references a shield in relation to this titan, which may be referring to the Aegis and the position of a titan as a general protector. The repeating K and V reference the Kabr's Glass Aegis lore tab, which if you recall, showcased Kabr's conversion into the Vex network. Seemingly, the K stands for Kabr and the V for Vex. We see the K and V in relation to each other on the Kabr's Glass Aegis lore tab, and we see it again here in Gnomic. So I think the connection here is that Kabr has been assimilated into the Vex network, and the K and V are used to demonstrate that. The last line of the lore tab also references the meaning of Kabr's name. It says, he was named too well, he is his own grave, which Kabr's name is an Arabic word meaning grave or tomb. The strange thing about that final line is where it describes the cut on his left hand will never heal. This seems to be a reference to the warlock Pujari, who received a vision of the Black Garden. In that vision, Pujari discovered a flower in the shape of a ghost, but this ghost was something he believed was a creature of darkness, and the ghost cut his left hand. When he woke up from this vision, the thorn cut was in his left hand, and it never healed. That line seems to be referencing this event. So, I think this entry could be describing some of the things Praedyth is viewing within the vault. He sees Kabr fighting the Vex, putting away his gun, and ultimately consuming the Vex radiolaria, while also viewing Pujari in the Black Garden. It also seems to hint that Kabr is now walking in the garden. It says, he is not, he is walking in the garden. He is talking, silent, singing, KK, VVVVV. Later, it says how a shape has overridden his mind, which is to protect, sacrifice, and grow. This statement is followed by VVVVV. So seemingly, that is the Vex directive, to obey, protect, sacrifice, and grow the pattern. So seemingly, KV, Kabr Vex, is walking in the garden. He is, but he also is not. He is still Kabr, but not in the way he once was. The title, Gnomic, is a word to describe text that is mysterious and hard to grasp, but still carries wisdom. The gnomic aspect is another grammatical feature used to express truths and aphorisms. Aphorisms are expressions used to deliver a principle. They are usually short and require an interpretation. So, this chapter is gnomic in that it is mysterious and a bit hard to understand, but carries an important truth. Chapter 4. Epistemic. This next entry showcases some of the timelines that Praedyth saw from his cell. He's seen so many that he doesn't know which are real, and from a certain perspective, they might all be. The Traveler is a constant. He cannot feel its light through the prison, but sometimes he'll see it hang above the last city, and that sight will make his heart ache. At other times, it hangs in an alien sky. Some visions he'll only see once, but others are recurring. One such recurring vision is that of a small figure standing in front of a shard of the Traveler, which is lying in a forest. The figure changes every time, but the glow of the Traveler stays the same. This is an image of the shard of the Traveler in the EDZ. During the Red War campaign, our Guardian used the shard to regain our connection to the light. Praedyth may be seeing alternate timelines where our Guardian is perhaps a different class or a different race. He describes another vision, which is of his fire team. He sees himself alongside Kabr and Pahanin, and it makes Praedyth weep, something he didn't think he still had in him, given that he's been desiccated. But this is just so tragic, because he's seeing himself hanging out with his friends, knowing those times are over. He sees repeated images of Mercury, with a large, bright sun in the sky, and sometimes absolutely nothing but rubble, and all the other planets gone. He describes how he sees aliens coming to the solar system. Some seek refuge, others come for conquest. He also watches the Vex. He can tell them apart between the precursors and the descendants, but he also sees how the Soul Divisive, the Vex that worship the darkness, are different from the other ones. The other Vex make an effort to distance themselves from the Soul Divisive. They've even fought before. They're afraid of the Soul Divisive, as much as Vex can be. He then says that some timelines have a thick veil drawn over them, a darkness that resists his sight. Quote, all the timelines he sees could be true for some living thing. He doesn't know which are true for him. He doesn't know if that's a meaningful question to ask. He asks it anyways, and he keeps looking. There's no reason not to. He's got all the time in the world. End quote. This chapter unpacks what Praedyth sees in the vault just a bit further. The name of the chapter also reflects this. Epistemic means of or relating to knowledge or knowing, and in a linguistic setting, it refers to epistemic modality, which describes knowledge and beliefs in a proposition. Epistemic modality is both a necessity and possibility. Quote, an epistemic possibility is something that may be true, given the relevant epistemic constraints. For example, given what we know about the weather, it might rain tomorrow, while an epistemic necessity is something that may be true given the relevant epistemic constraints. For example, I don't see Julie's car in the parking lot, so she must have gone home. End quote. Essentially, epistemic modality is referring to things that may or must be true based on the limited knowledge you have about the surrounding context. So, taking this to Praedyth's visions, he sees countless timelines that may be true, but he cannot fully know if they are true, because his knowledge is limited. He doesn't know which are true for him, he doesn't know if that's a meaningful question to ask. Chapter 5. Deontic. The pulses are stabilizing. The voices come often enough now that Praedyth has been introduced to their owners, Sundaresh, Esi, Shim, and Duane-McNiadh. Not infinite mirrored variations of them from different timelines, but simulations all split off the same base, way back in what must have been the Golden Age. Some have grown far different from their progenitors, some have not.
We have to base the modifications on the Ansible system.
He's either from 227.13 or 227.204. The voices have been bickering in his ear for what feels like hours.
The Ansible system is a thought experiment. It was proved impossible. An impossible machine could be the only solution to getting us out of an impossible prison.
Some people, Praedyth has heard, are their own worst enemy. In the case of Duane-McNiadh, this might be right.
So how do you propose to build it?
Finally, a decent question. Praedyth jumps in.
What materials would we need? Hypothetically, we're limited by what I've got with me.
He's in contact with 6 groups of them, all based in Vex network systems near Venus. They must be within ambit of the vault's entrance, whatever that means. There are more of them further out, both in the solar system and in the Vex information networks. Up to 221 more, apparently. There must be a way to contact them too, to use whatever let them connect with him and go even further, till they can figure out why now and what's happening, what the Vex are doing.
What do you have with you?
That's Maya, Dr. Sundaresh, brisk. The others listen to her when she speaks. He has 3 guns, 2 disassembled down to their casings for parts, 2 boxes of physical ammo, and 1 of Amalan energy cells he's been using to power his radio. He made a comm unit from his helmet and pulled fine coils of wire from the conductive pads on his gauntlets and steel plating from his boots. In his pockets, he's got lint and the wrapper from a candy Pahanin tossed at his head half an hour before they entered the vault. It's worn soft and folded into the shape of a crane. No ghost. Her loss is one thing he has never gotten used to after all this time in the vault. He still wakes up some days expecting the small weight of her on his shoulder.
Anything to etch circuitry with?
If you give me 10 minutes.
He's got a laser pointer and the focusing crystal out of his Amalan rifle. While he works, all the Chiomas hold their own discussion.
If Praedyth exists physically, even if the space he's in isn't strictly real, he has accesses we don't, and vice versa. Maybe together, we can get something to work. If you believe his story about the Traveler, I've believed weirder. Do you remember the first thing we saw the Vex do? Go for Maya's throat? No! Jump into that frame! Clear through the air! Think we're close enough to Vex at this point to use one of their tricks. What's a little more tightrope walking between friends?
Praedyth lifts his head from his former laser pointer.
How much of a chance does this actually have of working?
This was Shim, usually the quietest one.
Oh, negligible. But it's better than chasing after tech disproved centuries ago.
Praedyth doesn't have enough scavenged parts for both trials. It's one or the other, a choice they can't undo. They take a vote. Praedyth marks the tally with screws on 2 adjacent flagstones. 227.18's Chioma gives the first eye. It's unanimous. They're taking the leap. This entry is pretty straightforward. Praedyth communicates with the Ishtar team, and together, they vote on a way out. It's hard to tell what exactly their plan is, something maybe modeled after a Vex trick, but they only have one shot to pull it off, since Praedyth has limited parts. In the dialogue, the copies of Duane-McNiadh talk about creating an Ansible system, which refers to a fictional device capable of faster-than-light communication. It's the power to communicate over any distance. One copy finds this to be impossible, something they could never truly build. But they want to create this machine in order to extend their communications out into the network and beyond, in hopes of being able to contact the other copies. The text also mentions how they are located in Vex network systems near Venus, and within ambit or scope or range of the vault's entrance. Even though this place and the Vex network are in a different dimension of reality, the text suggests that they are still near Venus in space. It's weird to think about. The name of the chapter, Deontic, also has some key takeaways. It's a word defined as the ability to recognize and understand social rules and what happens when the rules are transgressed. Deontic modality is a linguistics modality which describes how things should be. It is used to express how the world should be according to a rule or standard, expressing what someone should or must do to meet that standard. The Deontic modal indicates an action that could bring the world closer to the standard. So in this entry, the rules are the laws of the prison and the Vex, and the Ishtar copies and Praedyth are attempting to change and transgress those laws in order to bring their current world to the standard they see fit. They're attempting to break the rules. Chapter 6, Atelic.
Describe time. No, really, give it a go. You're going to say something about a sequence of events, aren't you? Seconds sliced off a clock, marching one by one off into infinity. Go ahead, use your metaphors. A line, a loop, a flat circle. Heard someone say time was like water once. At least that was novel. The Vex, they're the closest to understanding it. They've got distance from it. If time's a river, then we're fish and they're diving birds. What's wet mean to a fish? What's it mean to an osprey who's never been fooled by the refraction on a water's surface?
Hold on now. You're gonna say, this is getting a bit abstract, even for the bodiless echoes of a dead guy in the garden. You want concrete truths? Something simple, digestible? A story to keep the dark out? You want time to be a staircase we keep climbing forever. But hey, even a guardian skips a step back or two now and then. Die with your ghost in range and we'll just pop you back to before that bullet. Give you the chance to make a fate you like better. Nothing's been simple on Earth since that big white cubo rolled in from the next neighborhood over. And the stories, they don't work too well as a nightlight anymore. You're going to say, but the Traveler's our friend. The Traveler likes us. It gave us a golden age and garden worlds and the Guardians. You're going to say you wouldn't be alive without it, Mr. Big Shot. Without it, I wouldn't be stuck in the Black Garden making bets of myself on which goblin's going to be next to slip on a soggy leaf and fall off a cliff either. You took my light already, you better take my advice. I know the void's still calling, but I've come untethered. I can't reach it anymore. So if I'm right that I can reach you, you keep your ears open. I don't care how much you hate hearing it. This is important. The Vex understand time in a way we never will. Doesn't matter how long I spend here watching them. Doesn't matter how many jury-rigged portals the Guardians fling themselves through. We live in time. They use it as a tool. Any moment that's ever happened, any moment that will ever happen, they can go back to it. Play it again until they get it right. Simulate it. The light's a counter to that. They come back, a Guardian comes back. They simulate an ending, a Guardian tears through it. Stalemate. But the Vex in the Garden, they bend the knee to the Garden's heart. It gave them power till you got lucky. The Vex outside, they made a different calculation. They run, but the Vex inside make the same deal you make, every day of your unnatural life. And who's to say that deal won't start paying off for them again anytime soon? You can't understand the Vex, and you don't want to understand the heart. But is your ignorance any more forgivable when it's willful? Lots of questions and not a lot of answers. You better take care, you'll drown in them. Surely as you'll drown in time, whether it's anything like a river or not.
This entry is from the hunter known as Tevis Larsen. Tevis was a friend of Cade 6, and during the events of the Taken King, he got himself trapped in the Black Garden. He lost his ghost, and eventually was killed by the Vex. He had a powerful connection to the Void, and so even though he was dead, his light still burned. His dusk bow remained, so our Guardian picked it up and gained the powers of the Night Stalker. After his death, Tevis lingered in the Black Garden as a bodiless echo of a dead guy in the garden. We know that this entry is from Tevis based on that line, as well as other clues, like how the narrator says he's been untethered from the Void. He describes time as something so abstract that humans barely comprehend it. The Vex are closest to understanding it. We live in time, the Vex use time as a tool. They can go back to any moment that has happened or will happen and simulate it forever and ever. The light is a counter. The Vex cannot simulate paracausality, and Guardians come back. They defy their logic. When the Vex simulates an ending, a Guardian goes right through it. The Vex outside the garden cannot perceive paracausality in this way, but Tevis makes an interesting note about the Soul Divisive, the Vex of the Black Garden. He says that the Black Garden gave them power, and they make a similar deal that Guardians make, in that the darkness of the Black Heart is the source of their power. The Vex of the Soul Divisive have a different relationship with paracausality because of the connection to the Black Heart. The name of the chapter, Atelic, comes from the words telic meaning to express an end or purpose, and a meaning without. So, without end. It's defined as a way to, quote, present an action or event significance as being the process or experience instead of the end accomplishment or goal, end quote. In linguistics, it is used to express the imperative aspect, which is, quote, a feature of a verb which denotes that its action or condition does not have a fixed temporal boundary, but is habitual, unfinished, continuous, repetitive, or in progress. Essentially, it is to express purpose in process, something unfinished and continuous without being bound to time. So for example, something atelic would be sitting on the beach and simply watching the ocean, or going on a hike for the sake of being in nature. These are activities that have no end goal or outcome in mind. They are focused on just simply experiencing and being in the moment. So, in this chapter, what is atelic is the nature of time in relation to the Vex and the Soul Divisive. Tevis interprets time as something atelic, unresolved, always moving and without an end goal, and without a certain ending. The Vex use time as a tool in this way, which allows them to go back to any moment that has happened, will happen, and is always happening, and simulate it again and again until they're able to fulfill the pattern, complete Vex domination and convergence. However, Guardians and paracausality interrupt that process. We can break right through it. To Guardians, death isn't final. We come back to life again and again, and possess powers of paracausality that cannot be perfectly simulated. Because we make our own fate, we have our own free will that cannot be predicted. And so, as Tevis says, this is a stalemate. The Vex simulate an ending, a Guardian breaks it. Causality versus paracausality. The Soul Divisive are different in the way that they submit to darkness, and that distinction is interesting. But the scary thing about this is the question of what happens when that deal starts paying off. And with hindsight, we saw what happened, and how they completely terrorized the solar system as servants of the Witness. But that also leaves a question of what happened to the Soul Divisive after the defeat of the Witness, and what they're doing right now. Are they all destroyed, or have the Soul Divisive directed their attention to a new master? Someone that they were always meant to follow, the Winnower. I don't know, but it's questions like these that make you really think about the nature of everything in the Destiny universe. Chapter 7, Jussiv. This chapter begins with describing how the pulses outside of the vault are coming faster. More copies of the Ishtar team arrive, and their messages are leaving the prison. They are going out into the ends of the Vex network. So what they were working on in the previous few chapters seems to be working. Perhaps they were able to create their Ansible system. Shim posits that the pulses are getting strong enough to boost data beyond the network into physical reality. Praedyth's got a rhythm down with the vault. He knows that a pulse will line up with a small moment of weakness, and it's in that window that he can push a message through. Again, it's seeming that these are the messages we hear in the Paradox mission. They send messages scattershot, as broadly and randomly as they can, and wherever they can, when the pulses rise enough to boost their signal. Sometimes the pulses get too strong and destroy the messages. So, instead of riding the metaphorical wave that are these pulses, the messages shatter apart. Praedyth thinks that they might be strong enough to carry something heavier than code. He also sees a creeping shadow looking over every timeline, and it rises over Earth. He sees the darkness coming for the city. He carves messages into the last functional pieces of his gear, thinking that a Guardian pays the most attention to their equipment, so someone is bound to find them. Quote, he knows the wave is coming. More visions flicker past him now, burning after images into his eyelids. More timelines, a possibility or eventuality, he doesn't know, lost to the encroaching dark. He knows they won't be able to handle it alone. He knows they need a warning. They need to know it's coming. Soon. This entry shows the Ishtar team and Praedyth exploiting these pulses as much as they can. Praedyth sees the second collapse coming for the city, the forces of the Witness and the Black Fleet. In an effort to warn our Guardian and the Vanguard of the arrival of the Witness and the Black Fleet, he carves inscriptions into his gear and sends them into the time streams. One of these weapons could be the No Time to Explain. The origin of the No Time to Explain exotic was something that confused the future war cult. It was a weapon from an unknown place in time. Delilah, a future war cult analyst, posited that the weapon was built by Praedyth, who based it on the Exo-Stranger's rifle, and then sent it adrift in a time ripple. We know that Praedyth saw the Exo-Stranger and her rifle traveling through different timelines. The Stranger, who we know to be Elsie Bray, sidestepped through various timelines, all of which led to an inevitable second collapse and complete darkness victory. She was a constant in these different timelines, and so he created a replica of her rifle and sent it out into the time streams. The time ripple could be these windows where Praedyth can send messages through the vault, and the description of the No Time to Explain reads, a single word is etched onto the inside of the weapon's casing. Soon. That final word, soon, is the exact word Praedyth seemed to have carved into one of his weapons. He knows they need a warning, they need to know it's coming. Soon. The weapon was a warning for the coming darkness. The chapter title also has a meaning. Joseph is a grammatical mood of verbs used to issue orders and commands. The command here is Praedyth's warning for the future. The no time to explain, the paradox messages. It was all an effort to warn us of the coming darkness and the future he saw. The future that led to a high-vex war. A future that had the sole device of coming to learn darkness. A future that involved the arrival of the pyramid ships and the forces of the darkness. Chapter 8. Volative. The penultimate chapter of the Aspect lore book. This one dives into the experiences of the various 227 Ishtar teams, and cataloging their first expeditions into the Vex network. The chapter is written in the second person, constantly referring to a you character which seems to be Chioma Esi. For example, the first line for the experience of the 227.97 team reads, "Here's how it goes. You and Maya and Shim and Duane-McNiadh take your first, cautious sliding steps out into the Vex information network." So the you has to be Chioma Esi. Team 97 begins to explore the Vex network, translating everything into metaphors to make sense of it. Each team goes into the Vex network and experiences its simulations. And many teams suffer some casualties. Copies of Shim, Duane-McNiadh, and Maya tragically die one way or another. There's an interesting notion that comes from Team 59's Chioma, who experiences the loss of her Maya. There are hundreds of Mayas out in the Vex network, but that thought does not comfort her. Even though the essence of who Maya is exists somewhere out in the Vex network, this specific copy was the Maya that Chioma had puzzled out. She spent so much time with her, made countless memories, and came to know her likes and dislikes. And so, she still misses this individual Maya that she had come to know. This detail is pretty interesting because it brings to light the nature of these copies. They aren't just empty shells and husks of who they simulate. They have become their own individuals, that while may share a similar voice, appearance, and personality, they still have their own differences that make them who they are. This was noted in Chapter 5, which described how some copies grew different from their originals, while others did not. The name of this chapter has an interesting meaning. Volative modality is used to indicate desire, wishes, and fears of the speaker. It is used to express things pertaining to someone's individual will. And we see that in this chapter. This entry questions the free will of the copies of the Ishtar team, and how at the end of the day, even though they are still simulations of real people, they also carry their own free will, and they have the ability to make it their own. Chapter 9. Irrealis. The garden wakes, and the undying mind wakes with it. It rises from the barrow that's grown up around it, shedding vines and hanging moss like bedsheets. Circuits flood with power, pass the excess along to the next in line, flex massive limbs in boot sequences. Goblins write more circuits and weld them to the mind, building it up to take advantage of the power. Not an occasional pulse now, but a steady hum. Their faith has been rewarded. In the vault, 183 sets of simulated Golden Age scientists flex their own limbs, ready to make a break for it. Praedyth, kneeling at his radio, shakes out his hands. They're stiff. He's stiff, queasy with exertion and worry and a stack of lifetimes in a cell, but ready.
How big is the transitor compared to a pen? Do you know?
He can't tell which Maya is speaking. There are 165 of her spread between the teams.
Are you calling me an angel?
This is Chioma, amused. Praedyth knows which team it is now. 227.72's Chioma sounds hoarser than the others. He doesn't know why.
Would you like to dance?
Duane-McNiadh snorts in 100-part harmony, and 80 shims grin and elbow him in the metaphorical ribs. It's a slim chance, but a chance is all they need. The garden's massive door hums, an echo of the song the goblins sing as they tend the flowers. The first minotaur readies itself to step through, shield coming awake around it. Everything that has happened is, from a certain point of view, always happening. Everything that will happen is happening. If you know how to slice the ribbon of chronology thin enough, you can step through to the necessary moment. If you know how to tear it, 160 Mayas reach for the Chiomas by their side. 158 Chiomas reach back. One Praedyth, waiting for the conductor's baton to drop. Uncountable Vex in the garden, waiting for the same event. A synchrony none of them notice. Somewhere, a veil is always lifting. Somewhere, Kabr is always dooming himself. Somewhere, a door is always opening. Somewhere, they are always stepping through. End quote. Alright, there's a bit to unpack with this one. This entry connects the first entry, Realis, to the Praedyth storyline and the rest of the lore book. The Undying Mind, as a reminder, is the immortal Vex unit within the Black Garden. We destroyed the Undying Mind in Destiny 1, but following the destruction of the gate to the Black Garden on Mars, it had time to recover. The Soul Divisive waited patiently for the darkness to return to them, since again, the Black Heart was destroyed. But, with the Lunar Pyramid's resurgence on the moon, power seemingly flowed back into the Black Garden and pushed these Vex to act. The Guardians discovered a gateway into the Black Garden on the moon, which allowed the Undying Mind to connect back to the solar system and enact an invasion on the moon, desiring to access the Lunar Pyramid. To shield itself, the Undying Mind made copies of itself in multiple timelines to prevent its true death. Eventually, we destroy the Undying Mind and all of its copies for good. However, Osiris posited that the destruction of the Undying Mind had changed the futures the Vex recorded in the Infinite Forest. Quote, "The sphere of the Traveler was gone. In its place, an obsidian monolith, at least twice the size, dominated the sky. In the last city's place was a swirling dust storm, tinged purple by the dying light." End quote. This was the inevitable future Osiris saw because we killed the Undying Mind. But back to Aspect. In the first chapter, Realis, the Soul Divisive feels the resurgence of darkness. In Irrealis, we feel the effects of that pulse. It's no longer just sporadic pulses, it's a constant hum. The Garden and the Undying Mind wake up, and all of the Vex are flooded with the power. Meanwhile, Praedyth and all of the Ishtar copies prepare for their mission. They are seemingly waiting for the Garden's door to open. Praedyth waits for the Conductor's baton to drop, while the Soul Divisive anticipate the same moment. And the timeline is a bit ambiguous in the end. Somewhere, Kabr is always dooming himself. The darkness that clouds all the timelines Praedyth sees seemingly lifts and dissipates. The door opens, and Praedyth and the Ishtar copies could make their escape. But these things happen at different points in time. Everything that has happened is always happening, and everything that will happen is happening. And this makes sense given what the Irrealis mood means. If Realis moods express cold hard fact, the Irrealis indicates a, quote, certain situation or action that is not known to happen, or have happened as the speaker is talking, end quote. So it's something that has yet to happen. It's all hypothetical at the moment of speaking, in contrast to the Realis mood, which describes known factual events. This whole entry is describing an event that has yet to happen, or perhaps already happened if you think about it in that way. It's an expression of an Irrealis mood. It's a bit confusing, but the main takeaway from this chapter is that the lore tab provides a way for Praedyth to return. And a return that is seemingly when the Conductor's baton is dropped. And this entry has been referenced long after the events of Shadowkeep. The entry for the Polyphony lore book known as A Stranger Give It Welcome describes the events preceding episode Echoes. The Echo of Command is plunged into the Vex network, and a rush of voices comes to meet it, some of which seem to be the copies of the Ishtar team.
We need to warn them. There's still a chance.
Hold on to me!
I am this.
Hurry! Get Shim! There isn't enough of me left. Tell Elsie Praedyth still!
Please, wait.
Warn them! I have to warn them!
A key detail here is the line, "Tell Elsie Praedyth still," and it's cut off, which presumably ends with "lives." One of the copies who had contacted Praedyth in the Vault of Glass wanted Elsie Bray, the Exo-Stranger, to know that he still lives. The lore of the Desert Perpetual also speaks on this. I made a whole video similar to this one that goes over the entire story and lore of the Desert Perpetual. If you'd like to hear more about the Ishtar copies, the Vex, the Nine, and the evil of Maya Sundaresh as the Conductor, go check that one out next. But in that raid, we hear this from one of the copies of Chioma Esi.
Other iterations of our exploratory teams voted to try leaving the VexNet. We elected to stay behind. There's work left for us here. Someone has to do it.
Seemingly, the explorers who voted on leaving the Vex network are the ones who came into contact with Praedyth. We could also be seeing the fruits of their labor in the Desert Perpetual. Our device that we are actively working on throughout the post-raid quest is known as the Simulant Ansible, a device that allows for communication across the Vex network. So this could be the same Ansible system that we heard about way back in the Deontic chapter. For one, we are working with copies of Chioma and Maya on this Simulant Ansible, copies that might have interacted with the copies Praedyth interacted with. It carries a similar function, that being a device that allows for communication across a huge amount of distance, and is also called an Ansible, very similar to the Ansible system that we read about. So this could be the same device that the Ishtar team and Praedyth were working on. The Desert Perpetual lorebook, which dives into the story of the original Maya Sundaresh who became the villain known as the Conductor, also has some clues that connect back to Irilus. The final line of its first chapter reads, "I lift my hand, breathe, and let the baton fall." This line comes after the Conductor was swept back into the Vex network following her defeat in episode Echoes. To her, it was a minor setback, and it would not stop her work. She lifts her hand and lets the baton fall. Remember, the line in Irilus spoke of the Conductor's baton being dropped. This to me is a direct connection between the two entries. Perhaps this moment was the metaphorical baton Praedyth was waiting on, and here, years later, it finally fell. The baton could be seen as the Echo of Command, the tool with which the Conductor uses to conduct or control her Vex. But she's been losing control over both her collective of Vex and the Echo itself. Perhaps her death or her loss of the Echo is when the baton finally falls, and in this entry, that process at least began. Perhaps Praedyth and the Ishtar team escaped the Vex network after all. There is potential for their ultimate return, but if they did end up leaving, they might have found themselves trapped in another domain. Irilus suggests that they could have gone through the door and into the Black Garden, and perhaps that is where they are now, another horrific prison within the realm of the Vex. The story of Aspect demonstrates how the Vex and humanity both interact with time. The name of the book itself refers to what aspect means in linguistics. It is a way to express how a state or action extends over time, a way to describe how the change happens over a certain period. For example, the perfect aspect describes an action that has been completed, or the progressive aspect that describes something that was or currently is ongoing. This lore book could be seen as a demonstration of all these different aspects, different ways to describe actions over the course of a period, whether that period is ongoing or already complete. We see the current actions of the Soul Divisive, which could be seen as the progressive aspect, as well as the actions of Praedyth and the Ishtar Collective, which exist in a plane that is not bound to our constraints of time, but perhaps already complete, or will become complete at one point in time. The story of Praedyth is one that is deeply tragic to me. He just wanted to spend time with his friends and wished to make that moment last forever. In doing so, he trapped himself in an existential prison, becoming unstuck in time. But perhaps it was his destiny to become unbound by time in that way, as he was able to see various timelines and ultimately send our guardian a warning. And perhaps there is more for his character. Once he escapes that dreaded vault, comes back to the last city, feels the warmth of humanity and the light of the traveler once more. The Vault of Glass, and everything it represents, has a deeper, more esoteric meaning that we have yet to examine. Our first reference of the Vault of Glass describes it as a Vex underworld, and just that statement opens up a very interesting rabbit hole. Let's first take a look at the nature of Venus itself. In a variety of cultures and ancient religions, the planet Venus is closely tied with the concept of the underworld. Venus has an interesting cycle in the night sky. Besides the sun, it is the second brightest object, and also follows a synodic cycle, which means that Venus orbits closely to the sun, and will seem to disappear for a few days, only for it to reappear on the opposite horizon and other side of the sun a few days later. Ancient civilizations saw this effect and believed it to be two separate objects on either horizon, as it acted as both the morning star and the evening star. Other civilizations, like the Sumerians, understood that the evening and morning stars were actually the same object. In Sumerian culture, Venus was closely tied to the goddess Inanna, also known as Ishtar in Babylonian and Akkadian cultures. Inanna, or Ishtar, served an interesting role, as she was both the goddess of fertility and war, representing both life and death. The synodic cycle of Venus, where it disappears on the eastern horizon and then reappears on the western horizon, became equated with a journey into the underworld and a rise out of it. One of the common myths regarding Inanna is her descent into the underworld, and there are two versions of her story. A Sumerian version from around 2112 to 2004 BC, and an Akkadian version from the early 2nd millennium, between the years of 2000 BC to 1001 BC. In the Sumerian tale, Inanna goes to confront her sister, the goddess and queen of the underworld, Ereshkigal. Before she leaves, she tells her servant to seek counsel with a few other Sumerian gods to rescue her if she does not come back after 3 days. She approaches the gates of the underworld, and the gatekeeper known as Needy asks her why she has come, with Inanna responding that she is attending a funeral. Ereshkigal allows her to come in, but instructs Needy to bolt the 7 gates of the underworld, and as Inanna would pass through each gate, she would have to remove her garments. Inanna's royal garments were a representation of her strength and power. Inanna is allowed entrance into the underworld, but as she passes through each gate, she has to take off a piece of jewelry and eventually her clothing. She passes through the 7th gate and reaches the queen, but is naked and in this state, powerless. To quote a translation of the text, after she had crouched down and had her clothes removed, they were carried away. Then she made her sister Ereshkigal rise from her throne, and instead she sat on her throne. The Anuna, the 7 judges, which are the Anunnaki, rendered their decision against her. They looked at her. It was the look of death. They spoke to her. It was the speech of anger. They shouted at her. It was a shout of heavy guilt. The afflicted woman was turned into a corpse, and the corpse was hung on a hook. Inanna is killed, and her servant pleads to the gods, but they refuse her offer. The god Enki decides to help, and creates 2 genderless figures to find Inanna's body, and then revive her. And they would do just that. They would find her body and revive her. But even with her resurrection, Inanna has to provide a substitute to stay in the underworld in her place, and she has her husband take the burden. The Akkadian version involving Inanna as Ishtar is very similar to this story, with Ishtar going through a similar process, a death and rebirth, and has her husband, Drumzi, take her place in the underworld. The passage into the underworld is very much tied to the cycle of Venus in the night sky, and this tale and mythology has influenced the story of Venus and the Vault of Glass in Destiny. Let's first take a look at the area of Venus that we explore, the Ishtar Sink. The name immediately connects back to the Sumerian and Akkadian tales. The name Ishtar is a direct reference to the goddess of fertility and war, but also the nature of the word sink. It calls to mind a descent, like a sinkhole, an opening into the depths of the underground. In many ancient mythologies and religions, sinkholes served as gateways into the underworld. It is within the waking ruins of the Ishtar Sink that we begin our descent into the Vex underworld. The waking ruins are possibly named for the action of coming back to life, a sort of awakening from death. Or perhaps the area is named after the fact that the Vex structures are so old. They are considered ancient ruins, and we are here waking them by opening the gateway into the Vault of Glass. The entrance into the underworld is blocked by a spherical gate. The underworld itself is a series of deep caverns and catacombs, and the gate itself is something carved into the natural structure. This seems to be similar to burial processes and tombs of ancient civilizations. It's like a rock-cut tomb, a burial chamber that is carved into a natural rock formation, like a cliff, and with the entrance of it blocked by some object, like the way in which Jesus Christ was buried. This entrance also connects back to the Inanna and Ishtar myth, with Inanna approaching the gate into the underworld at the beginning of the story. Journeys into the underworld begin by entering a gate on the surface, and then starting a trek downward. We press into the trial of Kabr, with again, Kabr being a name for a grave or tomb. While the reference indicates the fate of Kabr, it's also the name of a process experienced by those who have died in Islamic beliefs. The Fitnat al-Kabr, also known as the trial of the grave, is the moment where the soul faces its actions, and is questioned by the angels known as Munkar and Nakir. These angels ask the soul of the person who has died 3 questions to determine how they are to be judged in the afterlife. This process is very similar to a Jewish mystic tradition where the souls are punished by an angel known as Duma and his 3 angels of destruction. Duma's name translates to silence in Hebrew, meant to symbolize the silence of the grave. In the afterlife, the souls are tormented through a slinging process where they are thrown back and forth until they are purified. These are both references to the afterlife and the underworld. So, Destiny's trial of Kabr seems to reference the Finat al-Kabr, the trial of the grave, and how Kabr was thoroughly judged by the Vex, and ultimately met his demise, dying in a silent chamber. Continuing on, we reach the Templar's Well. As mentioned at the very start of this video, this is a direct reference to the Knights Templar of the Catholic Military Order, but there is a deeper connection that I intentionally saved for later into the video, and that is regarding their connections to esoteric knowledge. The Knights Templar were the military order who were closely tied to the Crusades, and acted as guardians to those coming to Jerusalem. They were founded in 1118, and were active until 1312 AD. Their base of operations was located on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, as it was believed that the ruins of the Temple of Solomon were beneath it. The Temple of Solomon is very important, as it was commissioned by King Solomon, the son of King David. It served as a holy site and held many important artifacts and objects, including the Ark of the Covenant. It was destroyed in 586 BC by King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon. A second temple was constructed once the Jews returned to Jerusalem, but was again destroyed in 70 AD by the Romans. The location of the Ark of the Covenant is where things get interesting. Jewish tradition states that before the Babylonian invasion, the Ark of the Covenant was transferred to somewhere more secure. Many legends suggest that it was hidden within underground vaults and chambers beneath the Temple Mount. Some say that the prophet Jeremiah foresaw the invasion and decided to hide the Ark of the Covenant in these chambers. Other sources claim King Josiah hid the Ark of the Covenant in the temple or within its underground chambers. A Masonic source says that the legendary figure of Enoch constructed 9 underground vaults, and states that King Josiah was warned of the Babylonian invasion and put the Ark of the Covenant in a vault of Enoch. These sources and traditions have slight differences, but essentially, they all point to there being these mythical underground chambers and vaults that could contain the lost Ark of the Covenant and other forgotten holy artifacts. The Knights Templar actually went digging for these chambers, but they seemingly never found anything. There's also the Well of Souls to look at here. This is a man-made cave located beneath the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount. This cave is right under the foundation stone, which is a stone that is considered to be the beginning of God's creation, and also the same place where Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac. The Well of Souls was also known to Christians as the Holy of Holies of the old Jewish temple that was most likely placed right on top of the foundation stone. It is also said that there is a chamber beneath the Well of Souls. An ancient Islamic legend also talks about this Well of Souls, where it states that you can actually hear the spirits of the dead waiting for Judgment Day within the Well of Souls. This would make this cave a connection to the underworld. Jewish traditions from the Talmud states that the foundation stone served as a way to seal away the abyss. Tehom is a Hebrew word to refer to the deep or the abyss, and a word to describe a primordial sea and ocean of chaos. The foundation stone is also important in that it was believed to be the rock that the Ark of the Covenant was placed upon in Solomon's temple. So, to summarize all of this, many myths and legends point to there being hidden vaults and chambers underneath the Temple Mount, and these vaults and chambers could have contained legendary items like the Ark of the Covenant. Within the Dome of the Rock lies the Well of Souls, which is a location that seemingly connects to the underworld, as legend says that you can physically hear the screams of the damned. This all falls into place when examining Destiny. First of all, the Templar's Well seems to connect to the idea of the Well of Souls. The Templar's Well and the Well of Souls both use the word well, where well is a word to refer to a deep shaft or a hole into the earth, into the underground. Both are places deep within a cave and serve as bridges to the depths of the underworld. Remember, the Vault of Glass is a Vex underworld, and the Templar's Well is not the bottom of the pit. The Templar serves as an analog to the Knights Templar, who are guarding the secrets of the Temple Mount and were devoted to searching for ancient relics like the Ark of the Covenant. Destiny's Templar is guarding the deepest secrets of the Vault of Glass, and it's also no mistake that we find the Aegis, a relic of immense power and divinity, within the Templar's Well. There's a common through line between both the Temple Vaults and the Well of Souls, and that is the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was a sacred chest that contained the 10 Commandments, Aaron's Rod, and a pot of manna, all holy relics to the ancient Israelites. But the most significant part of the Ark of the Covenant is the mercy seat. This was the gold lid at the top of the chest. It featured 2 cherubim that formed a throne with their wings, a throne that served as a seat for God to appear and dwell upon. This mercy seat was God's earthly throne, which Jesus Christ fulfilled by his coming. The mercy seat served as a gateway to the throne of God. What we've learned by looking at these ancient vaults and hidden chambers will also help us truly grasp the meaning of the Vault of Glass itself. But for that, we have to go deeper. This takes us to the Gorgon's Labyrinth. As we discussed at the beginning of this video, Gorgons were creatures of Greek mythology that had the power to turn someone into stone just by looking at them. The labyrinth part may be a reference to Daedalus's labyrinth of Greek mythology, a confusing maze that was designed to contain the Minotaur, also known as Asterion. That does seem to be a direct reference to the Vault of Glass, given the similarity to Atheon. Atheon is a Vex Minotaur, like how Asterion is a Minotaur. And their names are kind of similar. I say this because their names are both spelled and said in similar ways, but the names do mean different things. Asterion means starry, where Atheon is without time, so different concepts. Ancient labyrinths of mythology do share similarities in that many of them take place underground. They serve as prisons of terrible creatures and symbolize the depths of the underworld, and that most of the heinous monsters are located deep underground. Leaving the Gorgon's Labyrinth, we cross the abyss, the large, gaping chasm, which may symbolize the primordial sea or ocean that the foundation stone was meant to cover. But we cross the threshold, and finally, we appear before the glass throne. It is before the glass throne that Atheon stands and judges our fate. It holds the power to erase us completely, to make it like we never existed at all, lost to the dark corners of time. And this area is heavy with religious parallels. To start, let's take a look at the Book of Revelation. The Book of Revelation, also known as the Apocalypse of John, is the last book of the New Testament of the Bible. John of Patmos, not to be confused with John the Baptist or John the Apostle, was given a series of visions and symbols regarding the second coming of Christ and the end times. This book serves as an epistolary text, which is a piece of writing directed at a certain person or a group of people. It's also an apocalyptic text and a prophetic text. This text connects symbols and ideas across both the Old and New Testament, and by examining those relationships, we can take a look at how they influence the creation of the Vault of Glass. It seems that the glass throne imagery was inspired by the depiction of the throne in heaven. Quote, "After this I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice, which I had heard speaking to me like a trumpet, said, 'Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this.' At once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven, with one seated on the throne. And he who sat there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian. And around the throne was a rainbow that had the appearance of an emerald. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and seated on the thrones were 24 elders, clothed in white garments, with golden crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning, and rumblings, and peals of thunder. And before the throne were burning 7 torches of fire, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne there was, as it were, a sea of glass, like crystal." End quote. Revelation 4, verses 1 through 6. The key takeaway here is that before the throne was a sea of glass like crystal. Another chapter in the book of Revelation describes a similar picture. Quote, "Then I saw another sign in heaven, great and amazing, 7 angels with 7 plagues, which are the last, for with them the wrath of God is finished. And I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass mingled with fire, and also those who had conquered the beast and its image and the number of its name, standing beside the glass with harps of God in their hands. And they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb." Revelation 15, verses 1 through 3. In this passage, we hear about the Sea of Glass again, and standing beside the Sea of Glass are 7 angels who sing the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb. The book of Daniel, which is an Old Testament prophetic text, also gives some insight into the nature of the end times. Quote, "At that time shall arise Michael, the great prince who has charge of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never has been since there was a nation till that time. But at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness, like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." End quote. Daniel 12, verses 1 through 4. This passage describes how the Archangel Michael will come down from heaven and protect everyone who is found written in the Book of Life. The Book of Life is the record of every person who will receive everlasting life in heaven. If they believe in Jesus Christ, that he died for humanity's sins, which allowed for humanity to be redeemed, and then that Christ rose from the grave on the third day, they will receive salvation and will be recorded in the Book of Life. Those who do not believe and instead reject him will face everlasting torment, as they are not written in the Book of Life. After the 1,000-year millennium and the true defeat of Satan, every human who has ever lived throughout history will face judgment. Quote, "Then I saw a great white throne, and him who was seated on it. From his presence earth and sky fled away, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. Then another book was opened, which is the Book of Life. And the dead were judged by what was written in the books, according to what they had done. And the sea gave up the dead who were in it. Death and Hades gave up the dead who were in them, and they were judged, each one of them, according to what they had done. Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire. And if anyone's name was not found written in the Book of Life, he was thrown into the lake of fire." End quote. Revelation 20, verses 11 through 15. This passage describes the Great White Throne Judgment, where God judges every soul who had ever lived, both dead and alive. This judgment comes by examining the Book of Life that contains the names of those who had believed in Jesus, and if they were not written there, they are thrown into the lake of fire. Already we can make some interesting parallels here. Destiny's glass throne seems to be an analog to the throne of God. First of all, in its appearance, both thrones carry a sea of glass-like crystal, and both have a similar function. God sits upon his throne to judge humanity, just how Atheon sits upon its throne to judge us. The previous encounter, the Templar's Well, seems to represent the earthly throne of God given the connections to the Ark of the Covenant, which remember, was the temporary throne of God. That area seems to symbolize the place between Earth and the afterlife. As the Well of Souls was a place between the Earth and the underworld, the Templar's Well is what connects Venus to the true depths of the Vault of Glass. The Templar, which parallels to the Knights Templar, is a figure to demonstrate the search and protection of God on Earth. The Knights Templar were attempting to find and protect the secrets of God, like the Ark of the Covenant, in the same way the Templar guards the true secrets of the Vault of Glass and Atheon. Atheon can be seen as a parallel to God's role in Revelation. God sits upon his throne of glass and crystal, and is frequently described as a being who was, who is, and who is to come. God is unbound by time. He always was, always is, and always will be, an eternal nature. In a similar way, Atheon is without time. It is a Vex designed to sidestep past and future, so by that nature, it is also unbound by time. And both figures have a command over spirits who sing, and both are figures who judge fate. And the oracles could be seen as spirits or angels who carry out God's bidding on Earth. The word oracle, which comes from Latin meaning to speak, is defined as someone who is prophetic. They receive communication from the divine and can act as a mediator between mortals and deities. Oracles could also be seen as angels. The glass throne symbolizes the ethereal, everlasting, and ultimate throne described in Revelation, adorned with the sea of glass and crystal. Atheon is surrounded by oracles who sing a certain pattern, and if you fail to perceive their song, you are erased completely. These oracles seem to represent the 7 angels who sit beside the throne of God, who sing the Song of the Lamb and the Song of Moses. The Great White Throne Judgment has connections to the way in which the time streams operate in the Vault of Glass. Revelation talks about how people of the past, the present, and the future will all come to be judged at once. Every person who has ever lived will be brought to judgment at that moment. And in a similar way, we are judged in the past, present, and future through Atheon's command over the time streams. And to go even further, the Great White Throne Judgment also connects to the idea of being erased from existence completely. While the common interpretation of hell is that of everlasting torture in a literal pit of fire, there is a belief that eternal separation from God is actually annihilation. It means that those who rejected God are completely annihilated and erased forever. It means that separation from God is total erasure. that the entire body and consciousness and existence of those who reject God are completely destroyed and obliterated forever. They are not sent to eternal hellfire, they are annihilated. Annihilationism holds the belief that God will only grant immortality to those who are given eternal life. Believers in Jesus Christ will go on to receive eternal life in heaven, while those who rejected God are subject to erasure. If being with God means having eternal life, then being separate from God means having absolutely nothing. You are destroyed, your entire existence erased, reduced to absolute nothing. Oblivion. This interpretation counters the idea of a literal depiction of a scorching hell by questioning the nature of existence in that plane. If a soul continues on in hell, they still live in some capacity. They are immortal in a way. Even though they are subject to everlasting torture, they still persist, and therefore, still are remembered in some way. Their existence is not forgotten or lost because they exist. Even though they are in pain and suffering and misery forever, they still exist. But the annihilation theory posits that these people are destroyed forever, and their legacy and memory are reduced to nothing. They are forgotten. They are completely forgotten and erased from existence. Those who've subscribed to the annihilation theory believe that this is a just punishment for disbelief, and the only possible afterlife for those who do not want to live with God forever. Separation from God means oblivion. The Vault of Glass shares a similar idea to that of annihilationism here. You are judged by Atheon, and if you do not carry the Aegis, you are lost to time, erased from existence entirely. We saw this happen with Praedyth. If he was not saved by that wish he made with the Ahamkara, it would be like he never existed. Kabr spoke about how he went into the vault alone, but still found a paradox in that he knew he had to have fireteam members there to open the gate in the first place. He didn't remember his former team. And that suggests that there could have been more members on the fire team than just Praedyth, Kabr, and Pahanin. A common theory is that there were 3 additional fire team members, but they were erased from time completely, to the point that nobody remembers them at all. Not Pahanin, not Kabr, not Praedyth. Their memory was erased. They were annihilated, forgotten, destroyed. The Paradox mission told us that Praedyth's memory was almost completely forgotten, save for his name in the margins of a few texts here and there. But for all intents and purposes, his existence was erased, and he was only saved by the Ahamkara magic, which allowed him to persist in that dreaded prison, and allowed him to send messages out of it. And that would have been our fate too. If we went into the vault alone, and without the power of the Aegis, we would have been annihilated. Our existence would be eradicated completely. But the Aegis, the power of the light, the nature of the paracausal, allowed us to defy the logic of the Vex. We defied annihilation by making our own fate, forging our own future, not one bound to the will of the Vex, but one backed by the power of the light. Kabr's sacrifice punctured a wound in the Vault of Glass, something eternal and impossible. His sacrifice gave us a powerful weapon of light, and through our faith, our belief, our hope in the light, we were able to claim victory. The paracausality of the light was unpredictable. The Vex could not simulate it. That allowed us to completely avoid annihilation. We survived, we persisted, we broke Atheon, and we made our own destiny. The Vault of Glass was a place beyond humanity. It was an ancient labyrinth filled with the most impossible creatures that possessed powers that we could barely comprehend, and creatures that were not bound by time in the way that we are. And these creatures sought to annihilate us and leave us forgotten. When you stepped into the Vault of Glass, you could not help but feel an overwhelming sense of cosmic dread, like you were stepping into somewhere you were not supposed to be. But even against all impossible odds, even against things beyond our own comprehension, we still fought to make our own fate. And that is the true story of the Vault of Glass, standing up to something terrifying and impossible, and diving straight toward it, deciding that you'll be the one to turn the tides of possibility. The ones who went in before us did not let the fear of the unknown and the impossible conquer them. Instead, they held onto their hope and pressed onward. And even though they fell, and these terrible creatures tried to erase them from existence, their actions were still remembered. No matter how dark the cloud over the future might be, this story tells you to carve your own path straight through it, and decide what happens next on your terms. Kabr did it, Praedyth did it, and you did it. No matter how impossible things might be, you still make your own fate. We have become legend because of our sheer will and belief that any ordeal can be conquered, any foe vanquished, any god cast down. Through this, we have forged our own destiny, triumphed over the impossible, and made our own fate. Once before, only evil stirred beneath Venus, but now above, goodness strides. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you channel members for your continued support. This is now my longest video, and it took so long to produce, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. There might be some mistakes here and there throughout this video, since it's filled with just so much lore and so many different references, so forgive me if I got something wrong or said something the wrong way. But I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Click on screen right now for another video, and again, thank you so much for watching. Guardians make their own fate.